Sodium bicarbonate supplement consumption can enhance high-intensity exercise performance. So high-intensity exercise involves maximal sprinting, maximal cycling, running, anaerobic weightlifting, so it's all-out maximal exercise. And the problem the athletes experience is their severe blood acidity because of the profusion of proliferating hydrogen proton cations while exercising. And this interferes with calcium release from the endoplasmic reticulum, sarcoplasmic reticulum, the high acidity, so muscle contractility is attenuated, and moreover the coupling contact of the actin and myosin cross bridges is interfered with when the athlete secretes strong acids during high intensity exercise. And then you have a reduction in heat shock protein 72 when normally it increases, so there's a counterbalance there. And then you also have an increase of PGC1 alpha protein synthesis, so there's a benefit there with PGC1 alpha. And the dose and the timing seem to be two critical variables of sodium bicarbonate supplementation with either pills or powder. And the optimal dose is 0.3 grams per kilogram, and it's usually consumed 1 to 3 hours before exercise. Your natural human buffering removes 62% of hydrogen protons. However, the sodium bicarbonate can amplify that higher. And athletes in these studies abstain from caffeine and ethyl alcohol, drinking alcohol, 24 hours for research to avoid distorting results. So the Coventry University in the United Kingdom, they had cyclists exerting 100% of their peak work, and their performance was enhanced, and their constant work performance improved by plus 17% for 9 of the 10 athletes. However, if they increased their peak work at 110 or 120%, their performance didn't show an enhancement for some reason, maybe because of acidity. It was too extreme. They ingested 0.3 grams per kilogram of their body weight in sodium bicarbonate while also concurrently consuming carbohydrate. One cyclist suffered gastrointestinal discomfort. However, he or she actually enhanced performance by plus 38%. The intensity treatment and time showed a statistical interaction, so there you can see they correlate together. And they concluded, the scientists, that 1 to 7 minutes of time or a 6-minute period would optimize cycling or in high intensity exercise, not at half an hour, or 2 hours, obviously. And future research should consider the pH rate of change, individual cyclist or athlete tolerance to sodium bicarbonate, and modified physical training. So McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, the lab rats showed improved performance of plus 52% when they ingested sodium bicarbonate before exercise. However, the human cycling athletes, the people, ingested 0.4 grams per kilogram of their weight in 2 doses, so 2 times 0.2 is 0.4, at a time of 1 hour, an hour and a half before high-intensity interval training sessions hit. And the sodium bicarbonate did facilitate the biosynthesis of PGC1 alpha, and this was developed through messenger RNA expression analysis. Athletes did experience a greater consumption of glycogenolysis, meaning the glycogen was depleted lower than normal. And in this study, instead of exerting a VO2 max, they exerted 90% of heart rate max, so very, very heavy, high-intensity exercise, very painful at some point. And individual workloads were exerted at 74 to 78% of maximal work. So the power was exerted between 223 and 303 watts. So it is high intensity. And visceral distress was measured equal for both the placebo and sodium bicarbonate groups, so maybe sodium bicarbonate's actually beneficial in that sense, as questionnaires showed. So in Western Sydney, Penrith, Australia, and at the University of Hull in the United Kingdom, the heat shock protein, again, normally increases with high intensity exercise. However, you lose this when you engage in high intensity exercise with sodium bicarbonate supplements. So you lose the heat shock protein to some extent. And the 7 cyclists exerted peak power of 300 watts, and angular velocity was exerted at rotating at 360 revolutions per minute, 60 revolutions per minute, and higher frequency. So it's high intensity exercise. So in Mississippi and South Carolina, weightlifters exerted hypertrophy exercises with 8 to 12 rep max sets, and they exerted high volume of resistance, so they exerted 70% of 1 rep max in 4 sets of 12 repetitions, and they were allowed 90 seconds of rest, as typically expected. So they exerted movements like leg presses, squats, knee extensions, and knee extension performance tests for a total volume of 16 sets at high intensity. So it would induce some hypertrophy at some point. And the knee extension performance test is unique because they exerted 50% of 1 rep max, only half, until failure or ultimate fatigue. And of course, this is like most studies, is randomized double-blind and counterbalance. They had 12 weightlifters exerting 16 sets. The carbohydrates reduced gastrointestinal distress, such as 300 milliliters of Gatorade and 1 bagel. So the weightlifters had carbohydrate with 2 of the 4 doses of the sodium bicarbonate pills, half of the doses. And then weightlifters increased their performance, improved repetitions by a positive 4.5% in contrast to the placebo group when they ingested sodium bicarbonate and carbohydrate before their 16 sets. Squats, leg presses, knee extensions, and knee extension performance test at 50% of 1 rep max. So improved performance. So in Mississippi, Belhaven, and Charleston, South Carolina, the athletes, the weightlifters, did sacrifice some of their natural growth hormone as a result of sodium bicarbonate supplementation, even though they improved performance by a positive 4.5%. Weightlifters consumed a chronic period of 8 weeks, and they performed 3 sessions a week. And even rats were demonstrated for 11 weeks to enhance performance. So they concluded that chronic sodium bicarbonate can potentially enhance exercise performance. And the carbohydrate reduces the catabolic cortisol, and muscle hypertrophy would be measured greater after 12 weeks of resistance training. So it takes time for these studies. And athletes should ingest sodium bicarbonate. So in this study, they had ingested it 58 minutes before resistance training, so the gastrointestinal distress would be affecting their visceral gut would be minimized lesser. And at German Sports University in Cologne, the athletes consumed 0.3 grams per kilogram sodium bicarbonate while engaging in 4 bouts of 30-second duration periods. So you have 120 seconds or 2 minutes. Water diluted the sodium bicarbonate at a rate of 0.02 milliliters per kilogram of water. Their lactate hydrogen proton cotransport did not change significantly, and the red blood cells were sustaining concentration gradients between the plasma and the muscle, allowing the high-intensity exercise to be performed. So high-intensity exercise can enhance VO2 max, even though the hydrogen protons and lactate were unaffected. It's not a significant measurement there. And so athletes in Granada, Spain improved their performance when they exerted 80 to 125% of their VO2 max from 1 to 7 minutes. So obviously it's a very short-term ephemeral exercise. It's not an hour or 2 hours. And the Coventry University, United Kingdom, again, you have 8 athletes, and they're beginning initial inchoate phase of a half an hour exercise demonstrated enhanced maximal sprint cycling performance. And their total exercise measured 60 minutes for 2 30-minute periods. So, but the performance enhancement occurred initially in the beginning, not towards the end. And so their 3-minute bouts or trials multiplied by 10, giving them a half an hour, they were exerted at 90 seconds of 40% of VO2 max, 60 seconds of 60% of VO2 max, 14 second sprints, and 16 seconds of active rest. So a total of 3-minute trials for bouts. And they had consumed 0.3 grams per kilogram of their body weight in sodium bicarbonate an hour before incremental cycling. So each bout is 3 minutes times 10 trials, 30 minutes. And so they concluded that the initial 30-minute period showed the performance enhancement because it conformed to the 1 to 7 minute rule. And so 3-minute trials, bouts. And the RPE correlates strong with sodium bicarbonate supplementation, slightly with the pH. And the pH changed most rapidly during the incipient beginning period of 5 minutes, as expected. So the conclusion of the scientist was determined that the 1 to 7 minute period of high intensity exercise had improved performance with sodium bicarbonate ingestion. And at Auburn University in Alabama, they concluded they needed more weightlifter participants. They had 6 and they wanted 18 to increase accuracy and significance of the study. So they did have performance enhancement, but they wanted greater or more extensive results. And the athletes were weightlifters exerted between 70 and 90% of 1 rep max. Blood samples were extracted. Athletes were euhydrated. They consumed the sodium bicarbonate 1 hour and 45 minutes before exercise, which conforms to the 1 to 3 hour rule for standard typical ingestion of sodium bicarbonate. 4 of the athletes did improve weightlifting performance by plus 16% or 3 repetitions, despite they only had 6 weightlifters and they wanted 18. So 4 people did increase performance, enhanced it. And so at Monash University in Victoria, Australia, the prolonged cycling that was continued for 60 minutes did not demonstrate performance enhancement significantly. And the reason is they wanted to exert a 469.2 kilojoule sum total workload, so they continued to cycle at high intensity until they achieved and generated 469.2 kilojoules of sum total workload of work. And they were exerting between 70 and 80% of VO2 max, which is high intensity. However, the timing was overextended at 60 minutes. So they did consume 0.3 grams per kilogram in their body weight while drinking 3 milliliters per kilogram in water at 15 and 30 minute intervals during the cycling sessions. And athletes had their blood extracted at 8 milliliters total. And the cyclists who ingested sodium bicarbonate had a higher blood lactate by 1 or 2 millimoles per liter, and despite their sodium bicarbonate ingestion, and compared to a placebo, and their muscle metabolism was not significantly modified. So glycolysis and glycogenolysis increased during high intensity exercise. However, they didn't show significance with that. But this study does provide evidence or proof that sodium bicarbonate enhances performance of acute exercise from 1 to 7 minutes, because their timing was overextended at 60 minutes. So they had taken a very long time, and so towards the end it didn't prove enhancement, but initially it would have. And then for the final conclusions here, so athletes need to be euhydrated. They should ingest an optimal typical dose of 0.3 grams per kilogram of sodium bicarbonate or 300 milligrams per kilogram. However, the range of 0.3 to 0.5 grams per kilogram is much greater, and it can enhance performance. However, there's a risk of gastrointestinal distress. So they would ingest the sodium bicarbonate 1 to 3 hours prior to the first trial. They need to be drinking water, of course, and athletes can also ingest carbohydrates at a rate of 1.5 grams per kilogram of their body weight, with 3 milliliters per kilogram of water. Athletes who are experienced or trained can either engage in acute endurance exercise or acute resistance weightlifting exercise. It's both. Either one can succeed because it's high intensity. That's the reason. It's high intensity. It's maximal. It's all out. But they need to exert the exercise in a 1 to 7 minute period. So you have a high intensity maximal anaerobic single trial of 1 to 7 minutes, which is a 6 minute period. Or you can engage in, and that would be continuous, or you can engage in 1 minute repeated bouts, 1 minute repeated bouts with rest. However, the 30-60 minute duration doesn't enhance the athlete's performance when sodium bicarbonate is ingested and supplemented. And the work in powers doesn't usually reflect that. So the 30-60 minutes is much too long. So studies that have that don't show enhanced performance. And so lactate concentration and glycogen expenditure usually increase when sodium bicarbonate is consumed before high intensity exercise because of the anaerobic effects. And lastly, last slide, athletes separated whole sessions by 1 week. They didn't consume caffeine or alcohol. They fasted. Stomach was evacuated. In research, they want to have more than 6 athletes, especially for weightlifting. Possibly 18 athletes or weightlifters would be optimal, or 18 endurance athletes. And athletes should exert resistance weightlifting between 70 and 90% of the 1 rep max. And the endurance anaerobic athletes should exert between 100 and 125%. 100 and 125% of their VO2 max when performing the cycling or the running or the sprinting. And that's it. Here's my reference list.